everyone! So today I want to talk about being an underwriter and how to link the novels. Most writers will either classify themselves as overwriters or underwriters. Overwriters do the first draft and it's massive, everything's there, it's great. Underwriters, like myself, finish the first draft and it's small and bare-boned and just has the essentials. Which means the editing process for both sides is very different, because overwriters just have to cut it down and delete stuff, and underwriters like myself have to add more content and create new stuff. I decided to make this video because on the project I'm currently working on, which is my third novel in my dystopian trilogy, I wrote it over the summer very quickly, and it's very small. And so I've started the editing process because it's the next book that I'm going to be publishing after The Tragedy of the Traitor. And it's been a struggle because I'm having to add a lot of stuff and it can get frustrating and I hate being an underwriter. So anyway, I'm going to talk about it. So what do I do to add content to my very small story? The first thing I do with my manuscripts is I ask myself if it even needs to be longer. Some stories work as smaller stories. Some stories just need to be a novella, but other stories need the rest of the details put in that were left out in the original draft. So I assess my manuscript and decide whether it needs to be longer or if it works as a shorter story. So if the answer is yes, it does need to be longer, I have to go through a few things. The first thing I do is read through the whole manuscript and keep notes on things that I find that are missing. Like on the story that I was currently doing, I was going through and there were just jumps between scenes that were maybe a few days long, maybe a month long, and there were obvious things that could be added. Scenes between characters that would enhance the story that happened in between the two scenes. A lot of times I tend to describe past events in my writing. I'll say something like, a month has passed, these things have happened, here we are now, and go into the next scene. So I have to work on getting rid of that whole, the month passed, here's a list of what happened, and actually write out what happened. So I read my manuscript and jot down scenes that can be added, add those scenes. Underwriters, such as myself, have to work really hard on showing versus telling. A lot of times in the first draft, we just stick it out there, this is what happened, okay, move on. And then when we go back in the editing process, we have to add details. Some of the show versus tell for me is writing the scenes instead of just saying this is what happened. I'm also horrible with descriptions of surroundings or of people, and I am really bad with sensory details and that jazz. So, when I go back through in the editing process for my short little novel that needs to be much longer, I go through scene by scene and try to add sensory details, try to add character descriptions, or set the scene so the reader can see where we are, not just have pointless dialogue. One thing that is important to avoid as underwriters, trying to beef up our word count, is pointless filler. Don't just add scenes because you want a longer novel, and so you just add dumb stuff that has nothing to do with the story, doesn't enhance the plot, it's just there. Avoid that if you can. You want every scene in your story to move the plot forward, to move character development along. Every scene needs to have purpose. Another thing that underwriters can use to help lengthen the stories, if they need a longer story, is subplots. Underwriters tend to focus on the main story and write that, and there may be subplots involved, but underwriters don't tend to focus on them, so going back in the editing process, look at your subplots. See if you can flesh them out, or if there are any at all. If there are, work on them. If there aren't, maybe add some. What I've been doing with my current manuscript is a lot of sensory details and character descriptions, adding that into my scenes, and then I have also been adding a lot of new content. Yesterday I wrote a whole new chapter from reading through it and making a list of things that the story was missing or the story still needed. I've been able to add a lot of content to this particular story. I don't usually add that much in the editing process, a whole new chapter. I don't know where that came from. This particular story was much, much smaller than most of my stories when I finished it. Not sure why. Possibly because I was writing it so quickly. Don't write a novel in 9 days because then the editing is crazy. So I guess advice for other underwriters: show, don't tell. Use sensory details, character descriptions. Make a list as you read your novel of things that are missing or could be added, and then go through and add those scenes. Work on your subplots, flesh them out. I don't know. That's what I've been doing. It's been working so far. This week I added 10,000 words to my novel. Hopefully I can keep going at that rate until it's fleshed out and a much more well-rounded story. And I'm not going to make any tips for overwriters because I'm not one. I can't help you. And what do overwriters do? Just hit the delete button? I don't know. There'll be a link in the description where you can find my website, which has my Robin Hood series, my dystopian trilogy. The 4th Robin Hood book will be published in 2 days, a few days. So be on the lookout for that. And then probably around December, not set on a date yet, but around the holidays, my 3rd novel in the dystopian trilogy, which I'm currently trying to beef up the word count, will be published. It might be into the new year, I don't know. It'll just depend on how this editing process goes, whether I get it done this year or early next year. In the meantime, happy writing, everybody!